What's happening, everyone? So I'm making a video that you can watch to help us get ready for our first quiz this semester. So this video, I'm going to focus mostly on the three different graphing styles. So first off, I'm going to point out what do they look like? Like what's their setup look like? And then how do you find their centers? Because once you can find the center point that we talked about in class, you can answer all the follow-up questions like domain, range, horizontal, and vertical asymptote. Okay, great. So the first style that we did, we followed transformations. So the kind of dead giveaway is you usually see an x, not an x squared, just a plain old x on bottom and no other x's anywhere else. So you usually see a little bit more concrete. My eyes are over here on this example. You see like that x plus 2 on bottom. So an x on bottom, when you look on top, you see a number. So no x squareds, x on bottom, number on top. We're going to follow the transformations. So how we do this, if you want to find the center, we have A, H, and K. So I'm looking over here is what I'm drawing over here. The A on top, remember A is going to have you vertically stretch and shrink. And it's also can have your reflections. So vertical stretch and shrink and your reflections. So when we look at A, that's not really going to move my center point around. It might change which corners my graph is in, but it's not going to change where my center is. H and K is going to have the effect on the center. So H, remember, slides you left and right, but it works in opposites. K slides you up and down. So we kind of follow, and I write down like what are my transformations first, and then see how that impacts my center. And then once I get my center, boom, we're on our way to getting asymptotes, domain range, all that business. Style two, that was the next one we looked at. The giveaway on that, so I'm looking at our example, is again, you're not going to see, oops, I kind of covered that up a little bit. You're not going to see x squared so much with this one, not very often, especially with what we're doing in Algebra 2. We're not going to see it. But you see an x on bottom and you see an x on top. So the degree on bottom matches the degree on top. So with what we're doing in Algebra 2, the giveaway on that is you see plain old x on bottom and then an x on top. So I see a 2x, which is still just a plain old x on top, x on bottom. So when the exponent on the x on top matches the exponent on the x on the bottom, that is style 2, okay? That is style 2. How we did these is we took the bottom. So we took like that x plus 5. We set that equal to 0 and we solved to find the x value of the center, okay? And when we wanted to find the y value of the center, we divided the leading coefficients, which means take the numbers in the front of your x's. The number in the front is on top is 2. The number in the front on bottom is 1. 2 divided by 1. That's going to get your y, okay? So in style 2, you're looking for either an x on top and an x on bottom, sometimes x squared on top, x squared on bottom, but we don't really do that in Algebra 2. So really looking for an x on top, x on bottom is style 2. Set the bottom equal to 0 and solve. Set the bottom equal to 0 and solve to get the x. Divide the numbers in the front to get the y. And once you get your center, again, you are on your way. The third style we looked at is this one right here. So what you're going to see, the official setup is the degree on top is smaller than the degree on bottom. So on this specific example, I got an x on top, but on bottom, I got an x squared. So usually a giveaway on this one is you see x's everywhere, and there's usually an x squared on bottom. So I see an x squared on bottom, and then on the top of that fraction, you see an x or just a number, okay? How we're going to do this is a little bit similar to the style 2. We take the bottom like x squared plus 5x plus 6. We take the bottom, set it equal to 0, and solve. And what you're going to get is you're going to get 2 x answers. So for this style, when we're looking at our centers, we get 2x, and we get 2 x's, so we get 2 centers. So you take the bottom, set it equal to 0, and solve by factoring. To find the y value with these is super easy because the y value is always 0 of these centers. So x value takes a little bit of work because you set the bottom equal to 0 and solve. Y value is always 0. So what I want to do in this video is real quick kind of talk through some problems. So if you're looking at your notes packets, there's I believe two or three pages left in them. It is great practice to get ready for this quiz. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the first 3 problems on here, hopefully very quickly, and then the remaining 3 are for you to try on your own. So first thing I'm going to do is if I'm looking at problem 1, problem 2, and then we're going to look at problem 3, I first want to pick out what style they are, and then I'll come back and try and do find their centers, domain, range, horizontal, and vertical asymptotes. So this first problem, I see a -2 on top, an x plus 6 on bottom, and then a -3 in the back. So this one, the things that I'm looking at that pop out to me is I see an x on bottom. That kind of gives me a little bit of a clue that it might be style 2 or style 1. And then also I see this like random number in the back. So when I see that, this to me is style 1. We're going to follow that transformation approach. The transformation approach is how we're going to get there. So I'll just go ahead and do this one, then I'll move on to problem 2 and problem 3. So style 1 is the way, if we look on top, that is A. And when we look at A, there's 2 transformations there. The first thing I see is the negative, which means we're going to have a reflect over x-axis. Okay, when I look at the top, I see a negative right there. The negative is going to force this to be a reflection over the x-axis. When I see that 2, there, that is a vertical stretch by 2. That's a vertical stretch by 2. So when I look at the top, the transformations there is reflect over the x-axis because of the negative, and the 2 is a vertical stretch by 2. When I look at the bottom here, I see an x plus 6. This is where my h is at. So I start thinking about, all right, with h, if I see a plus 6, I need to move in the negative direction. So I'm going to slide left by 6. We're going to slide left by 6. And the final thing I see is this -3 dangling off the back. That is in my K position. So remember, you got A on top, H on bottom, K in the back. When I see a -3 in the K position, that is a slide down by 3. So if we put it all together, we can start thinking about that center. The center is not going to be affected by reflection. It's not going to be affected by the vertical stretch by 2, but it is going to slide left 6 and then down 3. Left 6 and down 3. So my center point is going to be at -6, -3. Now I'm doing this digitally. I don't have a graph in front of me, but you can look at any graph paper, slide left 6, down 3. Once I know where my center is, it's kind of a race to really get the rest of the stuff done. So think about what is x, what is y, and you're on your way. So my domain, which I know deals with x, is going to be all real numbers except x cannot equal -6. All real numbers except x cannot equal -6. My range is going to be all real numbers, which remember we can use this symbol to say that, except we're never going to get a y value of -3. So I know range is y, domain is x. And if you're like, whoa, where did you get those numbers? These 2 numbers come from my center. So if we know where the center is, man, we know a whole lot. Final things to do here is horizontal and vertical asymptotes. Remember, when we think of horizontal, we think of HOI. So I know this is a y equals situation. When I think of vertical, I think of VUX. So this is an x equals situation. So I'm just trying to find the equations of those asymptotes. Again, I'm going to get these from my centers. So I'm going to have y equals -3 and x equals -6. And that is that first problem on there. When I look at problem number 2 to the right, we're We're trying to do y equals negative 3x plus 5 divided by x minus 2. I'm trying to figure out what style are we? What style are we? So when I look at this, the things that my eyes gravitate towards is I see a plain old x on bottom and I see an x on top. So I see an x on top, x on bottom. That, if I'm thinking back to my other page, that is looking an awful lot like style number 2. Style number 2. So this is style 2. So if I want to find the center, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the bottom, x minus 2, set it equal to 0, and solve for x. So I'd add 2, and I get x equals 2. To find the y value of my center, we divide our leading coefficients, aka divide the numbers in the front. So if I look at the top of this fraction, the number in the front is negative 3. If I look at the bottom of this fraction, the number in front is 1. Negative 3 divided by 1 is negative 3. So what I know is my center is at negative 3. Whoops, wow, messed that one up. My center is at 2 for the x value and negative 3 for the y value. Once I know where my center is, we are off to the races to do domain, range, horizontal, and vertical asymptotes. So my domain is going to be all real numbers, except we're never going to be able to use x value of 2. My range, what are all the y values we're going to receive? We're going to get everything, all real numbers, except the one y value we're never going to get is negative 3. Again, where do I get those? The center. Horizontal and vertical asymptotes. Horizontal, remember, we know deals with y, so I'm going to get y equals negative 3. Vertical asymptote, I know I'm dealing with x, so I get x equals 2. X equals 2. So that's how I did problem number 2. Our third and final one, this problem all the way down here. Y equals negative 2 divided by x squared plus 3x minus 10. So if I'm trying to figure out what style are we? My eyes are gravitating towards the fact that I see an x squared there, and I don't see any x's on top. So it's very, very similar to this style 3. X squared on bottom with nothing on top. That means my degree on bottom is, my exponent on bottom is bigger than top. We are working with style 3. Style 3. So here's how we're going to do it. Take the entire bottom, set it equal to 0, and solve. So we have x squared plus 3x minus 10. We set that equal to 0 and solve. Now, since I'm dealing with a quadratic, x squared plus 3x minus 10, I'm looking for two numbers that multiply to negative 10. Oh no, is my pen there? Multiply to negative 10 and add to 3. So I'm trying to think of two numbers that multiply to negative 10 and add to 3. I might need to doodle around with some numbers for a little bit to think about that. Like I know 1 times 10 gets me 10. 2 times 5. So I got to think, how can I multiply to negative 10 but add to 3? Those numbers are positive 5 and negative 2. Positive 5 and negative 2. Once I am factored, take each factor, set it equal to 0, and solve. So I have x plus 5 equals 0, x minus 2 equals 0. Don't need to show that Algebra 1 skill. You're going to end up with negative 5 and positive 2. So I know for my center, I'm getting 2 points here, 2 centers, one at negative 5 and one at positive 2. Now, that's the x values of my center for style 3. What's very, very nice is on style 3, we always get a y value of 0 for these. So my centers have y values of 0s. Which makes it super easy now to do domain, range, horizontal, and vertical asymptotes. So remember, domain is x, range is y, horizontal is y, vertical is x. And away we go. Domain is going to be all real numbers except the x values we are going to exclude. The x values we don't want, again, they come from our centers. We do not like negative 5. And we do not like 2, so negative 5 and 2. Range, only on style 3. Range is a little bit different. What we're going to get for this is we're going to get all real numbers, and then period. There is no Y that is restricted here. We end up actually getting Y values of zeros from this. There is no Y value here, and that's only for style 3. Horizontal and vertical asymptotes are business as usual. Horizontal asymptote is Y equals 0. Again, it comes from the center. My vertical asymptotes are going to be X equals -5 and X equals 2. If you're like, where's that coming from? Still coming from the center. So that is a refresher on all 3 styles of problem. All 3 styles of problem. Yeah, just takes time kind of recognizing which is which, and then find your centers, and then you're able to do domain, range, horizontal, and vertical asymptotes. So it's the end of this video. You should probably try those remaining 3 problems if you haven't done so already. They're a great practice on all 3 styles, and we'll do more practice before our quiz day once we're back from all this snow day mess and all that stuff. All right, good luck on those problems.